Basketball Diaries. Today I was driving along on this cool morning in Rochester, New York, just thinking about some old school players. A lot of you may know Rochester had an NBA team back in the day and actually won the championship. But anyway, I was driving around and I was thinking, about the debate on Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain, two players that are often put in that all-time great category, right? Where even you might consider him the greatest player of all time. But for me, the criteria in measuring two players on their individual abilities and how great they were, I think a big thing with that is stats, obviously, and for a lot of people, it's winning championships, and that, I think that's a piece of it, but I don't think that's I don't think it's as important as a lot of people that want to conveniently think that that's the measuring standard as how many championships you've won. I'm not saying that Karl Malone's better than Tim Duncan, because he probably wasn't. Tim Duncan won a lot of rings, he scored a lot, he played great defense, blah blah blah. But when you're talking Chamberlain and Russell, it's just two players that were built totally different, played totally different. One was very stat oriented, right, where he averaged 50 points a game one season. He would get you 25-30 rebounds a game. He still has the highest points ever scored in an NBA game with 100 points. He has the highest rebounds in a single game ever, and I'm pretty sure he's by far the all-time leading rebounder still. I'd have to double check on that. And if they kept shots block shots recorded back then, he would probably be at the top of that list, despite how good Russell was at shot blocking as well. So that's kind of Chamberlain, and he won 2 championships, which isn't bad. That's more than most players probably. But then you got Russell on the other hand, who was more of a, for career 18 and 20 rebounds or so. He was a great rebounder too, arguably the best rebounder of all time as well, up there with Chamberlain. And the question is, who's better between the two, right? It's not who was better, the Warriors or the Celtics, or the Lakers or the Celtics, the two teams that Wilt played for. And obviously Russell played for the Celtics. Those teams in Boston were just so stacked. I mean, they were just unbelievable teams that, had Bob Cousy early on. I mean, Bill Russell arrived on the scene with the most dynamic point guard of all time up until that point, with Bob Cousy, who had never seen anything like that. And then, of course, immediately Sam Jones was on his team, and a couple of years later, John Havlicek and Tommy Heinsohn was on that team, and a couple other really good players, Hall of Famers, right? Whereas Wilt, he took it upon himself more to win, whereas Russell was more team-oriented. And so therefore, I would definitely say the Boston teams overall were better. 11 championships in 13 seasons for Bill Russell is unbelievable. But Wilt, to me, it's not even close, was the most dominant player of all time when you look at his individual accomplishments. Because that's what we're talking about when we compare players. It's not, championships alone. Some people even go as far as say, well, who won the most? Well, if we go by that standard, then you got to say, well, okay, Russell's the best center. I can't think of it. Maybe Tim Duncan would be the best power forward, right? And then John Havlicek's the best small forward because he won 8 championships, and Sam Jones won 10 championships, so he's the greatest shooting guard of all time, right? And then, maybe Cousy or someone like that was the best point guard. So it's kind of not fair to use that metric, if you will, when you're comparing two players, because Chamberlain didn't have quite the talent around him, at least at first. He did later in his career, but not for the majority of it. He certainly didn't have, and you can mention the coach too, Red Auerbach. I mean, you could say he's the best coach ever. He put that team together, and he coached them the first several years, I think, maybe even the first 8 championships they won. And then the last 2 or 3, Russell was the coach. I know the last 2 it was. But anyway, like I said, if you measure it based on championships, that changes everything. And I hate using that so much when you're comparing players. And the end of the day, the question really is can Bill Russell as an individual, could he have on his best day done the things that Wilt Chamberlain was able to do? And the same, we'll just throw this as a comparison. Could Sam Jones on his best day do what Michael Jordan was able to do? Of course not on both of those questions. Russell wasn't close to individual players, Wilt, and obviously Sam Jones wasn't close to the individual player Michael Jordan was. So just some thoughts. I'm not trying to squash the argument, but I think when you're comparing, at the end of the day, you're comparing two players, you're comparing their individual abilities and whatnot. And ultimately the question is, could Bill Russell do what Wilt Chamberlain could do? Not even close. And could Wilt do everything Russell could do? He could certainly score better. He could rebound better. Shot blocking, we'll give that a draw, but I bet Wilt probably block more shots, especially if he really wanted to. He was definitely a better passer. As we all know, he led the league in assists one year, the only center to ever do that. So the resume for individual greatness goes to Wilt Chamberlain without question between the two, and I don't think there's really much of an argument. I think some Boston fans may disagree, and definitely Bill Russell would disagree with that because he kind of uses that championship metrics. Anyway, just some thoughts. Give me your comments below. Like the video and subscribe. Hope you enjoyed the conversation, and thanks for listening in.